Sophie Everard, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
How's it going?
Having a great day. Just jetted into London from Norway. Slightly discombobulated walking around the city after being in the beautiful, icy, snowy mountains of Norway. But nevertheless, happy to be here.
How was it hanging out in Norway versus... I always see you on Instagram, I always see you in the seas.
Yes.
And in hot places. So how was it, by contrast, hanging out in Norway?
So I'm actually sort of been craving the cold recently. I think that's a byproduct of spending a lot of my time in very warm places, which I'm very grateful for, and I love the ocean, but I also have a very long enduring love affair with the cold and the mountains. I actually grew up in the mountains in Greece as a child.
Okay.
And I could see a snowy mountain from my house, Parnassus, and I learned how to ski there as a kid, and people are always so surprised when they hear like, you can ski in Greece, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah, right. I was just there a few weeks ago, actually. James and I were there about 2 months ago, and it's baking hot.
Yeah.
And the guy that was hosting us was like, yeah, you can ski, you can ski on that mountain like 20 miles away.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah, people are always so surprised, and some of my earliest memories of being snowed in at the house. And
Oh, wow.
I spent a few years doing winter seasons in the French Alps, so I sort of had this like big passionate love affair for surfing that really has been like ingrained in me the last years. But snow and a love of snow sports in the mountains has been slightly dormant, but now I feel it's sort of like calling to me again.
Can you surf in Greece?
Not really. They don't really get the right kind of swell. I would say maybe a couple of weeks a year you might get the right conditions.
Right.
But you can do all other water sports. Like I learned how to water ski and wakeboard there and dive and free dive.
So it sounds like you were a sports baby.
Sports baby, definitely. I had a very active father, and my other earliest memories are just having a big sweaty face, chasing him around, being slung on his back, hiking up mountains.
Right.
He also loved the ocean, and we had a little boat there, so we'd go sailing a lot. And I feel like, my sort of earliest memories all involve movement of some kind, and
amazing.
sweating and excitement and burning from like how good it felt.
I'm the same, actually. My dad was like a big runner. He did a couple of marathons when we were growing up, and my mum ended up doing them as well. And so it was kind of get out the door in the morning, get on your bike, and it's like you should not be at home, get out.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
It's not a case of come home for dinner. It's like, we don't want to see you until dinner time, you know?
Till you're covered in mud.
And it's amazing how that then, exactly. It's amazing how that then frames life. You know, it's such a, it's such a blessing to be given that so early on, that's your model to be out and kind of moving the whole time.
I feel like that's something I'm so grateful for. Like, you think about your parents or where you came from, and I know how lucky I am to have had my parents. My dad actually passed away quite a while ago, but I still feel more than ever, as I really come into what I feel I'm meant to be and who I am and what fires me, I feel more of him suddenly waking up within me. Whereas he passed away when I was 18, and I've always been quite wild, but back then I sort of lost touch with the sports I loved and being in the outdoors, and then that kind of sent me on a bit of like a tailspin, and was partying too much, and then suddenly like realized actually, it's quite important to me, those elements. They make me smile and they make me feel amazing, and I want to get in touch with that again. So fast forward 13, 14 years later, and like I just feel this huge part of him within me, and my mother too. Hers is the more maybe gentle, nurturing side.
Yeah, right. It's kind of quite strange, isn't it? I have something similar. When I turned around about 20, I didn't lose either of my parents, but coming to university, basically a big transitional point in life, and how I kind of then just fell out of love with all the things that I kind of grew up doing, or not fell out of love with. I think I just forgot, or I got distracted. I got distracted by university in London, and frankly, drinking and everything else that kind of goes with it. Not really so much work and studying, but everything else. And then really only in my, when I started to get back to my early 30s, did I start to remember that these were the things that kind of really made me happy.
Yes.
Like, it's that cliche, right? That, what was it you did when you were a child?
Yes.
And, just go and do that. And it's, it brings me, I can't quite do the same things I was doing as a child, but
I don't know. I feel like you almost...
my body doesn't quite let me, but it still takes me back to, okay, I just love to be running wild, being on a bike, climbing trees, these types of things, and that's what really sings to me now.
Yes.
I just remembered that that's what sings to me.
Yeah. That's why I felt I almost was feeling pretty rotten, to be honest, as you would do if you lost a parent.
Right.
And actually, I was like, right, well, what am I going to do? And something about the mountains was calling to me, and that was a special place I shared with him. So I was actually skiing as a child, and then I was surfing and wakeboarding and skateboarding, but I was like, well, I'm just going to go learn to snowboard. So sort of ran off to the mountains, and I did spend a big portion of that time partying, obviously, when you're 18.
You're 18.
Yeah. But it ignited.
You need the contrast.
You need the contrast. And like, I'm firmly about those balances as well. But once I began to get more in tune with that side of myself, it took a couple of years actually. And then just realizing the simplicity in that and in how good it made me feel, and wanting to feel that childlike sense of happiness and stoke, and my cheeks burning red because I've had an amazing day running outside in nature. So I sort of dropped the things that made me feel rotten. So I was like, I am partying a bit too much, and actually I'm not a big drinker, so I don't want to have some hell-bent hangover for a few days.
Yeah.
I do think it's important to have balance though, and I love going out dancing, and I'm known to sometimes send it on a few margaritas, but it's a bit rarer now because I can go out dancing and have fun and not need drink.
Yeah.
But yeah, I sort of felt...
That's also another relationship I've noticed that changes.
Yes.
I don't know whether it's certainly when I think back to... I basically don't drink at all anymore.
Yeah,
I just don't feel the desire or need for it. But when I think back to when I was maybe 20 or 18, there was definitely an element of drinking to hide insecurities,
yes,
which I only really became aware of in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And now actually I quite like myself.
Yes.
And, so I don't feel the need to have to, drink to hide.
Yeah.
Like I did when I was 18 or 20, or just kind of growing up. And
and I think that's pretty normal actually when you're that age. It's like you've just come out of the hormonal period. You don't really know who you are yet.
Few too many spots,
and you're surrounded by cheap alcohol at university. But I also think, when you're not drinking a lot, so I do like to have a nice glass of red sometimes, and I really appreciate it. And I do love like dancing and like that kind of environment. But I have this joke amongst my friends now, and they're like, talking about goals in life. And I'm like, I feel like a frigging ninja right now, because with all the movement I'm doing, and when you're feeling healthy and strong, and you're sort of realizing what your body and mind are capable of, you really tap into, I think, a part of you almost that can be dormant. And when you're so fine-tuned and being healthy and practicing what's best for you, so it might not be the same for anyone, I think it almost unlocks your ultimate potential. So right now I'm doing things with my body I never thought I would do. And that's not even being 20 years old or 15, when if you fall, you're often made of rubber and you don't break. And actually now I feel more like ninja-like, because I'm so excited now.
And there's appreciation for what you have as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You fall and you don't even think about it, but now it's like you consider it.
Yeah, you're considerate, and it's, I love like mixing up the different types of movement I'm doing now, and I'm not so hard on myself about it either. But I take a great pleasure in feeling that kind of awesomeness of like, I feel like my body and mind are like strong and in a happy and healthy way, and that I feel like the Karate Kid, like I can do anything.
Amazing. So I know from having read some bits and pieces on you, of course, that what you're doing now is not what you've always done. And for anyone listening to this and they've listened to previous podcasts, I'm sure they'll be thinking, fucking hell, he's not about to say the story again. But James and I basically have a similar background in that, I ran a record label for 10 years. James ran a fashion label for 10 years. And then we pivoted and now do this. But what was you now seem to be an adventure vagabond wandering the world, doing amazing retreats. But obviously that's not where you came from. Or in fact, rather it is. It sounds like it is when you were 18. But
it is. I feel like the DNA and blueprint of doing that had always been there. And it's very funny because I remember speaking to my first boyfriend when I was 15, being like, I want to do something that reaches out to people one day in my life. And I almost feel like being 15 was yesterday because I remember this so clearly. But I've always been involved with sports and the outdoors. So I worked for action sports, events and marketing. So within snow sports and surf mainly. And I always kind of had this end game of like having a business and creating something that was more than that. And then I worked for action sports magazines, publishing as a journalist, and then for action sports brands. And it was like a couple of, quite a few years deep into those careers, that vision was becoming a bit more alive, because I sort of realized I was getting close to the skill set I needed to do that. And I didn't want to rush it or do it without the right skill set. I wanted people to come to me knowing they're in safe hands. So I also qualified as a personal trainer and a surf coach. And then at the same time, my surfing and all the sports I was doing was sort of like taking off a bit. And I was an ambassador for a big surf company for 5 years or so. But then I thought, now is the time to create the dream. So I actually did it whilst I was still in full-time employment. And I wanted to create...
On the side,
yeah. And I was teaching sport at the same time. It was a busy time in my life. And actually I did burnout, learned a lot of lessons about burnout.
Right. It's a really, really familiar story, actually, burning out.
Yes.
I mean, I think the key to anything, look, for people that want to change, like having a major change in their life, I think, you know, doing it on the side is a really obvious thing in hindsight, not when you're trying to work out how to do it.
Yes.
So, but I need to give up this to start this. It's like, that's one way.
Yeah.
The other is just to be doing it on the side and let it kind of grow.
That's what I did, and like let it grow. So I wanted to create this brand. So I was teaching sport, fitness, and seeing how good other people were feeling, sort of benefiting from the way I love to live, and sort of like has a touch of the wild about it as well, being in touch with what makes you smile the most with movement and sweating and the outdoors, and then also kind of having maybe a bit of a bold fiercelessness about going after and pursuing what it is that sort of like alights you. So I was writing for a couple of magazines as well, so I wanted to create a channel and a brand and a vision that brought that together and that people could connect with it. So Mad to Live, the brand, was born, and there was a lot of sort of literature I was pushing out with it, and content, and then workshops, movement workshops, and then the dream was to create the retreats, which was like almost the physical manifestation of the brand. So I was off surfing for 6 months, and then I just knew the time was right, and it almost wasn't...
Is there like a key moment? For me, I remember being sat at my kitchen table and I was doing all these things on the side.
Yeah.
And I was doing them pre-work and post-work. So literally, I'd be at home working from 6 to 8 in the morning and from 8 till 10 at night.
Yeah.
I remember just trying to do something one night. I was like, I'm absolutely exhausted.
Yes.
Like, what do I need? Actually, what I need is just time. Like, I just want more time in my life. And I remember having this light bulb moment. I was like, well, if I quit my job, then I'd have all the time to do the things that I want to do. And that was it. Literally, having spent 2 or 3 years trying to work out how to move on, in that moment when I just realized that I just needed to quit.
Yes.
And that would give me all the time to pursue the things I needed to do.
Yeah.
Everything else just went out the window. It was like, well, like the fear of not having any money, or, you know, how will I make money, or where will I live? And it was bizarre. It was in this moment, just, I had complete clarity. Did you have a moment?
Yeah, I did actually. It's funny because I felt there was almost over a year where I was sort of like instilled with fear. And I think fear is like one of the most paralyzing human emotions, especially when it comes to going after what you really want to do. And it often can be naysayers around you too. They might actually have good intentions because they're scared for you. Oh, you won't have a steady job or income.
It's their own stories, right?
Yeah, or this is dangerous. And I heard that quite a lot from people I love, and I know they meant well, but actually it did begin to sort of destabilize me. I was like, you know, I feel like there's something not just deep in my gut, but it's like encompassing me, that's telling me this is the right thing to do. And I literally could feel it like radiating out of me. I knew I had the skill set. It already gained a lot of momentum, and I just thought, sod it. So made the decision. And then I just remember the last day I ever walked out the office, again, a very sort of clear moment. And I was like, thought it would be some crazy moment, maybe with tears, or it'd feel profound or sad or something. And I literally just sort of like strolled out, and that was it. And then left, and took time as well. So I was like, dang, I just want to go like adventure for a good 5 months and then get my head clear.
The time thing's so important. You were saying also, you know, when you were 18, you went to the mountains.
Yes.
Like, it took you a couple of years. Like that appreciation of like, okay, well, there needs to be a transition time.
Yeah.
You don't just go, you know, from here to here like overnight.
It's no, absolutely not.
Processing, I suppose.
A lot of people ask me about that with my business, and I'm like, it actually, and your first question, it actually sort of feels like a life's work. It's been like my life's vision, and if you see those crazy montages in like an 80s movie, which I'm a big fan of, and you see the fast forward through life, and I feel like I can see myself like around my dad's ankles in Greece, like mud on my cheeks, fast forwarding to a teenager, and then to when he passed away, and like losing the love, and then it coming up again, and then all the different careers, and then doing this. And I feel like it all led up to that moment, and it continues, and I can now have a lot of amazing moments because I'm so fortunate now to connect with a lot of people through my brand, Mad to Live, and people who are connecting with it either on the retreats or reading the literature around it, or connecting with something else I'm sort of producing. And it just like amazes me every time. And I hear some kind of comments or testimonials that sort of blow my mind, because it was like my wildest dream that I could share how good that lifestyle makes you feel, and that I think it's fundamentally important that we move more and get in touch more with sport and the outdoors. Because after my father died, I was horrendously depressed for years, and like felt rotten as hell, and I didn't want to feel that way. And I went to see, you go see like psychologists, and you're like, what's wrong with me? And you go down medical routes. And then actually it took making some decisions which at first appeared scary. So it was like realizing that fear is destabilizing, and actually you kind of need to like let that just slide, and if your decision feels right, go for it. And 2 healthy habits which are so simple to adopt, like moving a few times a week, whatever it is you love to do, drinking more water, getting enough sleep.
Can't overestimate the basics, can you?
Honestly, you really can't. And like taking time for yourself, maybe it's different for everyone what works for them. But, those sort of simple ways. And also like when your body is strong, how good it makes you feel cerebrally. So when I have people connect with me now and they feed back and tell me if they feel awesome or had some sort of positive connection with it or the retreat, it like absolutely blows my mind, and like get quite tearful sometimes.
Is there like a stereotypical person that comes on the retreat? Like I feel, certainly over the past few years, maybe a little bit longer, let's say the emergence of yoga retreats, for example, it's like, they've kind of exploded in popularity the past 10 years. Do you find a similar type of person that comes on a lot of your retreats? I don't know, they're like burnt out, or like, I don't know.
So there is something quite interesting. So if we're looking at people's background, ethnicities, ages, there is no common factor. So I've heard everything from 17 to 60 years old from
Hopefully those two were rooming together.
Yeah, actually they weren't, but I've had some very sweet moments with great age differences between people. It doesn't matter. But so people I've had girls and women from New Zealand, the UK, Ireland, Syria, Belgium, Cyprus, Canada, like all over the world, different beliefs, and they're all bonded normally by having a fairly open mind or wanting to have an adventure. And yes, some of them are often like maybe going through something in life or wanting to try something new, or maybe have a serious change in their life with regards to career, love, different relationships. And the brand is very much about like being fearless with yourself. And I think that sports the sports we do on the retreats, it depends on the location we're at, and it's really about showcasing the best of the region and also the amazing coaches we work with locally. So we go surfing, obviously, climbing, mountain biking. We're known to sort of jump off cliffs sometimes, horseback riding. But those sports, I think, can teach you so much about what you're capable of. And I see it all the time. And again, it's sort of like a mind-blowing moment. With surfing, you're knocked down a lot. You're knocked down. With climbing, a lot of people have fears of heights, of letting go. You're on belay. You have to trust someone beneath you.
They're real present moment givers. Like to climb or to surf. Generally with sports anyway, it's like you really have to be in it, right? And so I guess I'm kind of trying to decode it, I suppose, but that cliche of flow, it kind of allows the space for things to emerge, or the space for things to leave and depart.
I think it does exactly that. And it's almost like you can't really think about anything else when you're surfing and climbing. You're thinking about the environment, appreciating the environment, the next wave, what you're doing, where the next hold is. And again, appreciating the environment is a big part of it. But also it teaches you so much about your own tenacity, resilience, courage. And I think that can really overlap into other people's lives. And you know, I've had clients now who've been on like 4 or more retreats with me and come and spend time with me in other capacities doing workshops, and now they're friends and we travel together.
Wow.
And seeing how that overlapped into their lives, what those sports can teach you, what those different environments can teach you. I think people take a lot away from that, and I think it's very important. Like, that's why it's so great to do those kinds of activities.
It's interesting, isn't it? You only need a very small amount outside of your comfort zone to have like a really big effect.
Yes.
And just doing something that's completely unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And how that relates, like, you know, we get in the ice quite a lot, and you know, aside from all the health benefits, for me, the big reason for that is the adaptation to stress.
Yes.
So you kind of get in, you have this really kind of like stressful response, like fight or flight, like you want to get out, and then using breath to kind of bring yourself back to be like, okay, cool, I can sit in here for a few minutes. And then how that then actually relates to seemingly non-related everyday events, just the way that you're able to cope with things.
Yeah.
Like, you know, people going through big transition points and they're using movement to go through it.
Yes. I think it's amazing. And I think now with like the spread of different communities and outlets, the message is becoming stronger. And I sort of like dedicate all my time to pushing out the message I'm trying to with Mad to Live, because I care about it with like every iota of my being. And I have so many, you know, hundreds, maybe 1,000, you know, thousands of girls and women who connect, and they're maybe taking away something positive.
Yeah.
And maybe they're picking up a skill that is making them feel absolutely epic.
I suppose, you know, to bring it down to a fine point, if you don't mind me saying this, it's like you're creating a safe space, right? You're creating an environment that people can come and be themselves or try new things. It's like you're almost like you're holding space for people, right?
Yeah, I like the way you use the word safe space. We use that quite a lot on the retreats. And we also have this running joke. My ops manager, Lucy, and I, she's a formidable person. I met her in the jungle and was a very sort of serendipitous moment as well. And we sort of joke about how many people come and then quit their jobs or break up with their boyfriends.
Yeah, right.
Because they're often coming, and it isn't just coincidence how many of them come onto the experience because they are wanting to have a life change of some kind. And, you know, like doing something completely different for a lot of them can awaken parts of you maybe you didn't realize were there, realize how strong you are, how capable you are of making decisions.
I guess that's the being open-minded and open-hearted.
Yeah.
That allows that facilitates the discovery of, you know, these new elements to yourself.
And I had this guest come one year. She's from Cyprus, this amazing lady, and she was very tentative at the beginning, quite fearful of coming and trying these crazy sports, being in our group. And you know, I sort of guided her along the way. I was like, don't worry, I've got your back. Because at first glance, when people look at me, they think I'm just going to be some high energy lunatic all the time. And to be fair, I am. But then also there is a soft side, and I love to nurture and guide people through this. And I love different personality types. So it's not just all really like out there gung-ho people. I love the more quiet ones. Yeah. And really love to like help nourish them. And she came, and seeing her transition through the week as she was horse riding and trail running and waking up at dawn to get in the cold water and surfing was astounding. And at the end, she told me she'd come on the trip fearful and then left fearless, and so has kept in touch with me a lot. And I'm just like always grateful for those kind of moments I get to share, because they're so powerful and intimate and poignant, and I just can't believe I get to experience that with someone. So
it sounds like you're a real nurturer. Which leads me to ask actually whether you have like guiding principles. You know, do you live to guiding principles in your life? Like you create safe spaces, you know, through the tool of movement.
Yes.
You know, you create these safe spaces, and you support people and you nurture them. And like kind of movement's almost like just the tool that you do it with, the byproduct. It could be anything. It's just that you've chosen to do it in the world of movement, right?
Yes.
So I wonder whether you have like guiding, I don't know.
I mean, I feel like I do. I definitely, not to sound cheesy or everyone says this, but I think approaching things with kindness and compassion, and that's a big part of what I do with the women and girls I connect with, and men as well, because the retreats are female only, but other workshops I run are also for both sexes. The guys seem to be getting quite pissed off they're not allowed on the retreats.
They keep seeing all those surf pictures, that's why.
But like having like an approach of love and compassion towards people, because I think when we are that way with each other, I mean, I see that on the retreats in these environments, and sometimes in extreme circumstances we might be in crazy surf or like hanging off a wall somewhere, and it's amazing seeing how that kind approach can break down barriers. And also just is so nourishing for someone to experience that kind of like love and care. So I'd say that's definitely very intrinsic, like professionally, personally, and I hope people who know me personally would agree. And then, like pursuing that sort of love of movement, that's so important to me, and like finding time as well and like maintaining it. That sometimes might mean dropping something slightly, like drinking, you know?
Yeah.
I haven't dropped it completely, but I just can appreciate like it in its scarcity now, you know?
Yeah.
So I would say, that sort of pursuing what makes your body and mind, because I think they're inherently linked. What makes them feel good is very central to what I do.
Yeah.
And then also, again, people who know me might agree, like I have sort of mentioned the touch of the wild about me, and I do think we're quite stifled day to day. And I've had a few moments with girls and women. Like one of my favorite moments was recently out in Africa, and we'd spent the day surfing and the conditions were insane. You know, there were a couple of tears, but also big breakthroughs. We went on this epic road trip, and then we hiked into the sand dunes, and like the moon was coming up, and we were just all howling at the moon as we were like,
amazing.
I know, I just started howling. It's like one of my favorite things to do. I'm actually getting a tattoo of a wolf howling at a moon on me next week. And we were just all howling, and it's like unleashing that kind of like wild awesomeness within us. And I don't like to put a lid on it, and I think it often has a lid like put on it now, but I do feel like that lid is being released with like, you know, people like yourself who are encouraging people to move, and like the literature you put out. And I think it just like vibrates around you how good you can feel when you're like in that wildness with yourself and in nature. And I've definitely been that way my whole life. I mean, like my mum used to think I was a lunatic, but now she loves me for what I do.
Now it's bearing its fruit.
yeah See, I was right.
So when I think of you, I always think of you surfing. So you talked about growing up that, you know, you had the mountains pretty close, and that you learned to ski and snowboard. Yeah. So where does the love of the ocean come from?
So we are very close to the ocean, and
you had the ocean on one side and the mountains on the other.
That just sounds bad. I'm sorry, I did. Yeah, I did. The ocean was like maybe an hour away.
Right. Okay,
and to get to the snow, it was like 4 or 5 hours.
Right. Okay.
Not far.
Yeah.
But then we were on the foot of a mountain, which is where we would go like hiking and trail running.
Oh my God. And we're sat in central London right now.
No, I know, but I do love it. I get to see wonderful people here and like enjoy chats like this.
Yeah.
But the ocean, I mean, I just, again, feel like my little legs were kicking in it from as far back as I can remember. My dad was a great waterman. Very early on I was swimming, and we were sailing in his boat.
Wow.
And the water in Greece is so beautiful, the culture around the ocean. And I loved swimming. Like I was a competitive swimmer as well, so I was sort of like very into water and the ocean and my body moving within it from my whole life. So I was always doing water sports. And then surfing, which I'm sort of almost quite synonymous now, although there's like a lot of other sports I do love to do.
Yeah, of course.
I actually started a bit later, like later in my teens. My first love was a surfer. And I sort of was like one day wondering to myself, why am I not surfing? I'm doing all these other sports. So I love the ocean. And I sort of said, well, I'm just going to go give it a go. But I'm not one of these people who learns things quickly. And I would say I made a few mistakes in that. I think it's really good to get good coaching, which again is why I started the retreats. Yeah. I wanted to provide excellent coaching, a safe space, an environment where people would get a diligent coach. And we do like a lot of analysis and, you know, like get one-on-one. And that's with the other sports as well we do. But yeah, I feel like that can kind of really foster a good environment to learn a sport. So
Yeah.
I started surfing, but was sort of floundering around for a while, I would say. And then really decided at one point, you know, I absolutely love the ocean, and doing sports like that it's such an amazing way, and we're so fortunate to be able to do it, is to explore the ocean that way.
So you said your dad was a waterman, so
Yes.
I guess you were in the ocean all the time.
All the time. Yeah, I feel like I just had puckered fingers and like salty skin and like the taste of salt all over me. Like,
Yeah,
from
sounds
when I
like he was a
big.
really inspiring figure in your life.
He definitely was. He was such an adventurer as well. Like, my whole life was sort of built up on his wild stories. So he like moved to Africa when he was 20, was out there for maybe 8 years, and had these absolutely bonkers stories. And his stories of the ocean, because it was so clean then and pristine, and he'd go fishing every day, and he'd tell me about mantas the size of like, you know, bigger than 2 cars jumping in front of their boats, and like giant mako sharks coming up beside them, and spear fishing huge barracudas and having to hide like next to reefs if they got too close. And
Wow.
I was just sort of enraptured. He was the greatest storyteller and truly lived all them. And funny stories like flying drunk in light planes across tribes in Africa, which he probably shouldn't have done, but I think they found it funny. He had a few friends there, but it's a wild adventurer and lover of the ocean, and a great sailor. And one of his jobs was to teach Miss Worlds how to water ski. Lucky man.
Amazing.
When he was a young man, so he taught me water skiing very young as well. And
Wow.
so
You live quite the life.
But he was also a very hard worker, and like in the same way I like to complement a love of the outdoors and the sports, is I also love business and like setting up a business and being entrepreneurial. And he was very driven that way, and so is my mother. My mum's like a formidably smart person, so I definitely like looked up to them both in that respect. So I like to mix the two. So sometimes it's, you know, normally I'm not wearing shoes and I'm like somewhere dusty and covered in mud, or, you know, whatever, on these adventures. And then other times I'm sort of strutting around the big smoke, having meetings and getting my business lady pants on, as I call them. And I kind of enjoy those two extremes.
Is there one lesson that he gave you that you remember in particular, or both your parents? I just focused on your dad because we've obviously talked about him. It keeps coming up.
I think definitely it was just like that almost primal wild love of the outdoors and movement, and how good it can make you feel. And I would see his great sort of smiling face and laugh, and, you know, how happy it made him. And then that is what was nurtured within me. So it's almost like never letting that fire of that, you know, go out. Which, as I said, you sometimes make decisions where you can pursue it more, which I have done. You think about yourself, like when you give up the full-time job and you want to go after that, it's like, I feel like that's part of that story. So I think that would probably be the main one.
Nice. And so I was reading also along the same lines of surfing, your the waves, is it the waves project?
The wave project.
So I know about it because I've read about it.
Cool.
But obviously if someone's listening and they haven't, what is it? Maybe that's a good first question.
So the Wave Project are a extraordinary British-based charity, not for profit. It was established a few years ago, and their ethos and what they do is they take children and adolescents suffering from mainly anxiety and depressive disorders, but also some physical and mental disabilities, and they're referred by social workers and doctors onto the surf therapy program. So there's over 30 outposts throughout the UK and Ireland, and they're enrolled,
as in 30 places that
they can go to and
right.
access it. So they're enrolled on the program, and I mean, we've treated thousands of children, and it's again in that belief that being in the outdoors, in the ocean, in confronting maybe some of your fears, in pushing yourself out your comfort zone, also bonding with other people there sometimes, how nourishing it is. And I mean, they've successfully treated thousands of kids, and a massive development we had in spring this year was through Children in Need, who gave us a massive backing. The NHS have recognised surf therapy as a legitimate form of therapy, and with that grant, GPs can prescribe children surf therapy through us, which is insane.
That's
because
so powerful.
It's so powerful.
Rather than the pills.
So when I was a teenager and my father died, and I was like, oh, you know, try antidepressants, but actually it wasn't about that for me personally. You know, it's very personal, and like you always have to sort of speak with, you know, your doctor and practitioner, but for that to be seen and recognized by the NHS is astounding. And
because then you put the power into I don't want to say patient.
Yeah.
You then put the power into the person's hands.
Yes, you do.
Rather than saying, well, you can't do anything unless you take these pills.
Yeah.
Versus, okay, you know, everything else aside, it's like you just got to get up and you just got to get out.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful.
It's so powerful and like very humbling when I've been on some of the, you know, coaching some of the kids myself, and I thought I would feel emotional, you know, I do with my clients on Mad to Live retreats, but then when you're with these kids and it's like something completely different, you know,
right.
and I feel so, I would do anything for the weMove project, and I'm a very proud ambassador, and I work with them alongside some of my other friends who are also ambassadors, and they're just amazing, and we've opened our first London project.
Wow, how does that work?
So this actually the bus is broken down. We just did a fundraiser to get money together for it, but got a converted bus
cool.
with wetsuit racks, places for wheelchairs, and it takes kids who are referred from Southwark to the Witterings to the project. And a lot of these children have never even seen the ocean.
Yeah.
So it's the first London project, and again an amazing development. But again, I really believe in their ethos and like getting to work with kids in that capacity, and also it being recognized as a form of therapy is just amazing. And the CEO Joe Taylor just does phenomenal work, and I love getting to work with him, and the charity are just astoundingly brilliant, and I just hope it would spread that, you know, understanding that that outdoors and movement can be such a positive way to feel good.
Reminds me of two things. So I've mentioned before, we press record that we spent time with Johnny Paskowitz from the Paskowitz family, kind of known as the first family of surfing, who's a total dude, lives in Paris, and is the second of, I think, 9 siblings. But he was telling us, so his dad Doc set up a surf school, I think about 30, 40 years ago, and it still, you know, teaches surfing as per normal, but one of his siblings who now runs it, I think he's called Isaac or Izzy, he had a kid with autism, or has a child with autism. I think it's probably now in his 20s. And they worked out from their own personal experience, like how valuable surfing was for their own child. And they then set up a school, I think it's called like Surfers Healing or Healing Surfers. Yeah. And they do something similar in the States where it's like, I think they go through like, you know, a couple of thousand, you know, families a year. With the same realization that it, you know, it helps treat these children in a way that traditional or conventional medicine just can't. Yeah.
And I think it's really being recognised. And in December, we went to the British Sport Awards, and
lovely.
Favourite moment of mine was Joe's face, the CEO, when we'd been announced as the winners of Sport for Social Change. And they started off by saying it's a niche sport, and I was sort of like, oh my God, that can only be surfing. And that was an amazing moment. And I just feel like it's beginning to, I mean, it's got quite a platform now, like through the NHS and Children in Need. And
I suppose it's one of those sports that's just not synonymous with the UK. Like, you know, unless you live on the coast, and even then I feel it's, unless you live in Wales or the west coast of Ireland or, you know, the southwest coast of England, it's just not really in people's consciousness. You know, if you grew up in the Midlands, for some reason, you know, they don't really think that you can go surfing for some reason.
Yeah, when I'm in England and when I have lived here, like, again, through my channels, I sort of love to show how, even if you're in London, how adventure is possible in every capacity, and it's close. And
it's close.
It's close.
Like the Lake District is only like 3 or 4, and well, it's probably like 4 or 5 hours away, or you know, or Devon's only like 4 or 5 hours away.
Exactly.
If you lived in California, you'd be doing that on Friday night and coming back Saturday morning without even thinking about it.
You go to work on the freeway.
But
like,
yeah.
And even in London, like, I'll take out my bike and go to Epping Forest, and you're like, holy hell, like, you're out of the city, and it's devastatingly beautiful. Or Kent is like a stone's throw away. The Witterings when there's surf. And then also, at first, when I moved to England from Greece, I was in a state of shock because I was like, I've been torn from my amazing natural habitat, and it was raining and drizzly and awful when I got here, and was just like in pieces. But very quickly realized how awesome English people are, because I made like my best friends on day 1 of high school nearly.
How old were you when you moved?
13 or 12.
Okay, right,
yeah.
wow.
They told me I looked like Mowgli when I arrived. So I had really short hair, was super tan and just like slightly wild looking, which I think I still look
Have you
like
met
now.
Richie Norton?
Yes.
That's exactly how he describes himself as well when he turned up when he was about 7 or 8.
Yeah, I know, little Mowglis.
Yeah.
But then I went on a road trip with my best friends when I was 17 to Cornwall and Devon, and was like, oh my God, like the surf scene in England is amazing. And I spent a lot of time down there now, working on personal trips. So much time down there. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. And the English surf culture is unique and it's amazing, and I've had some of the best surfs of my life there.
Yeah.
And I always look forward to going there and seeing my friends and getting to surf the waves. Like in Cornwall, on a good day, like the water is so clean and pristine.
Yeah.
I had this surf once, and the conditions were amazing, which is quite rare in the summer, so we had some pretty good swell, and the water was just like crystal green with like this amazing kelp. It was like Finding Nemo. Like I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, you just don't. I know that, but I don't even think about it like that.
Yeah. It's always anyone. Yeah, I would 100% recommend going down that part of the UK and exploring. And it's not just surf. There's like amazing hikes and walks and climbing.
It's such a beautiful
rides.
part of the world, let alone the UK.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to know if there's like you get the California surfing photo books from like the 70s.
Yeah.
It just looks super cool.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be a UK version out there.
I think there's actually quite a few, and there's been a few amazing films made about UK surf culture over the last few years, and they're also worth a watch. And like, I just love the English approach to things anyway.
Like self-depreciation type vibe. And actually versus the LA, I've kind of got everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the English style of doing it, and there's some incredibly talented surfers in the UK. So with surfing now included in the Olympics and climbing and skateboarding, it'll be exciting to see what happens. That's
amazing, because I mean, we've kind of connected to a lot of climbers, and just seeing the impact that the Olympics is having on climbing is, we're in Bermondsey, and there's a wall around the corner called the Arches, and
this is where I like climbing.
Right.
Yeah.
So after 6 o'clock, it's like going to a nightclub. It's like 1 in, 1 out. It's so busy. It's phenomenally busy, and I think there's something like 7 or 8 new climbing walls have opened up in London in the past year. It's incredible, the impact the inclusion in the Olympics has had on these, relatively speaking, niche sports.
Yeah, and I think if we look at what happened with snowboarding in the Sochi Olympics, so they included freestyle as a new discipline, and which means going through a snow park, executing tricks, going across obstacles. And it's the first time being included, and there was a bit of a like, oh, it's not going to be a success. Why do people want to watch this? They're all recalcitrant teenagers who do this. It's like, it's seen as counterculture, and it has been a counterculture sport, but it had like the highest viewing figures.
I was going to say, it's the only thing you watch in the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, and we had our first snow medal, Jenny Jones with a bronze medal for women's slopestyle, and then in the most recent Olympics in Korea for snowboarding, Billy Morgan also took a bronze in big air. So actually, the investment they made into that sport, and then the byproduct of that, like I know Jenny and Billy, and like they do amazing days at our indoor snow domes. Billy learned how to snow on dry slope.
Wow.
Jenny only went when she was 18, and like these places are producing some formidable talent. So the indoor domes, the dry slopes, the climbing centers and walls, these are so accessible now for us, for kids, and are amazing sports to do and enjoy. And they're stone's throw. Here we are in Bermondsey. There's a great center.
Yeah, literally everywhere. Do you what do you think the impact will be on? Like I've heard some climbers talk about the not so great impacts on climbing. Yeah. There must be something similar, or in the surfing world in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, because right now there's
not to focus on the negative, but just generally kind of the impact that
there's always
that's having
positives and negatives. Yeah. Same with skateboarding, I think, now as well. But because I don't know, like surfing's really evolved. Let's say in the last 10 years, hugely televised, massive investment. The athletes now, where maybe historically they would have been seen as sort of partying, weed smoking, nutters, are finely tuned athletes, some of the best in the world.
You look at Kelly Slater and
Kelly
it's like,
Slater, one of the best
my
athletes
God.
in any sport.
Yeah.
You know,
or Laird Hamilton. I mean,
Laird Hamilton,
like,
two freaks of nature.
I don't know if there's anyone in better shape in the world.
No. But, you know, like, I think there's arguments. One of the main thing is about, because it might be in a wave pool, so the artificial wave.
Oh.
So there's the difference between
Wow.
surfing in an artificial wave versus
Yeah, sure.
actually in the ocean. And, like, is that really surfing?
Yeah. And it's the same thing with climbing with the made up of 3 elements,
Yeah,
and
but
one of
they
them's the
have to-
speed climb. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, so there's those kind of arguments, you know, like the purists and, you know, whatnot. But I don't know, it'll be interesting to see it take that stage. I was very excited to see snowboarding and skiing have a similar stage at the Olympics. And I've always loved watching the Olympics, but it's how the main issues as well with snowboarding and the governing bodies and how athletes are enabled to go through to the Olympics. I think that's been some of the main
Right.
if it's a problems. So a lot of like the key talent might not be going because of that selection process.
I guess it's one of those things. It's like, you know, we don't remember what the selection process was for athletics, or you know, when it, you know, or any other sport that's been in it for such a long time that it's kind of inevitable, right? That someone's going to get pissed off.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. It's just unavoidable. Like no one's of the same opinion.
No one's ever like, you can't make everyone happy.
Yeah.
But surfing, in my eyes, and climbing, skateboarding are amazing things to do. They make you feel good, full stop.
Yeah.
So if a child sees that on TV and is like, oh my God, I need to go try this, and then starts doing the sport and is, you know,
can only be a good thing, right?
Can only be a good thing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to watch. So for an adventure vagabond that doesn't really have a base, I mean, you don't have a base, right?
Well, I am for the next, like, let's say 3 weeks.
Right, okay. It's not really a base. That's a micro base.
Yeah, micro base.
That's what some people go on, you know, on holiday for.
I've actually hung up my hat and unpacked a bag, so that's the start.
Right. How many bags do you travel with?
It really depends. I've tried to get a bit lighter because I have been a traveling circus before, and
it's good when you're on beaches and you need essentially swimwear and flip-flops, right?
Exactly. But then I bring things for our guests as well. But if I'm on like not the retreats, like personal trips, like I've been away with just like not even like a big what do you call it, backpack, like a smaller one for 6 months. But yeah, so the base is there. I've hung up my hat for a little bit.
Nice.
It's quite nice.
Again, good to get a contrast.
Yeah, good to get a contrast. I have extreme contrast. It's quite wild. Like 1 minute I'm like, howling at the moon in the desert in Africa. Then I'm like on top of this crazy rock in Norway and like in the land of the trolls. Then I'm like hooting and screaming with 15 chicks in the water in Portugal. I mean, this is what I love to do. But also having some peace and stillness is good. So I have been looking for a bit of that because this whole year I've been on the move.
Yeah. So, I mean, a great point. It's, you know, we were talking about this prior, but it's awesome to be on the move all the time.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to be having these great experiences, but you do need down periods.
Yes.
For like just general health.
Oh my God, that's it. It's for your health.
So how do you manage that psychologically, I suppose, would be the question.
It's because it's psychologically.
It's like being a band, being on stage playing to like 20,000 people, but there's always got to be, you've got to come off stage at some point.
Yes, you do. And before in the past when I would burn out, I didn't realize that. And I was like, oh, I feel like Superwoman. I can do everything. And and then had one really bad burnout. And then was like sick. So I couldn't do anything for like, let's say, 2 months, and then had a few months more recovery because I was exhausted. But now I'm a bit more stricter with myself. And I sort of mentioned to you earlier, I have these Garfield days, maybe after a big trip, which I like to sort of like just be comatose on the sofa, eat pasta, have a nice glass of wine.
Yeah.
But I need that because, you're right, psychologically, especially when you're doing something with a big group of people, and if you care about it, and I really care about the experience that I'm sharing with these girls and women, so I really pour everything into it, like every bit of blood, sweat and tears. So that squeezes you psychologically, emotionally, physically. Yeah. So ensuring you have downtime is critical. So I'm about to venture into that little Garfield phase this weekend.
A new experience.
Yes.
The opposite experience, the contrast.
Yeah,
the wild contrast, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Or contrast of extremes.
Yeah, I'll be a bit of Stranger Things for me over the weekend.
Yeah, right. Everyone's getting on about it.
I know, it's just because I love like the 80s. So I'm a big Goonies fan, Indiana Jones. Growing up on those things also took a part in shaping me. I live my life according to like my dream of being Indiana Jones.
You're like Mikey from the Goonies.
Yes. I love that you said that. But yeah, so like binging out on some like 80s adventure vibe, Goonies-esque drama right now is going to be right up my street. Nice. Well, it sounds like you deserve it. Thank you.
Wicked. Well, look, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Normally James would be here, but he's down in Brighton today, so no doubt we'll get to hang out at some stage in the future.
I hope so. Thank you so much for having me.
Enjoy the pasta.
I will.